So the classes belong, right? And we've had 5 sessions up till now, pursuing the Pilgrim's Path. We began with that image of the rope that represents religion, with the 3 chords: corporeality, morality, and spirituality. And the casing of the rope being the story that Donnell talked about 2 weeks ago, I think. And each of these is essential, and they're all connected together. So a spirituality that doesn't reflect a story is incoherent. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't hold together. A spirituality that doesn't affect the way we live, which is morality, and or one that's not fleshed out, meaning corporeal, involving the physical body and physical things, tangible realities, is kind of empty in this kind of a world that we live in. So a key step in making God, the God connection real, involves taking the corporeality part seriously, the enfleshed, bodily part of spirituality. Just to use the dictionary definition of corporeal, because it's definitely a 75-cent word. It's an adjective meaning relating to or characteristic of the body, of a physical, material nature, tangible. So spirituality is corporeal in 2 senses. One, it affects how we live our lives, which are enfleshed bodily, we're embodied beings, and is something we practice in the context of a flesh and blood collection of people called a community, the body of Christ, the church. In fact, someone recently asked me, they had just started experiencing Christ in a powerful way by coming to church, and they described, wow, when the worship starts, I'm like getting downloads, meaning I'm like, it seems like God is someone speaking to me, and I asked him how many people he had in his life who were part of his support network for his faith, and he could only mention one. It was the person he was living with. I said, well, and he says, is that the way it's supposed to be? I said, well, actually no, because Jesus calls us into a community, and there's no such thing as a Lone Ranger Christian. In history, there was never just one disciple following Jesus. He invited the first 2 together, so there would always be a community. So that's really essential to understand. Sometimes if we think about, well, we've just been talking about spirituality, this is something that I could have my own personal, individualistic spirituality. You could, but that wouldn't be a full Jesus-shaped spirituality. And one of the key things that Christians practice, the 2 rituals, if you will, that you'll find in every different church tradition, are communion, number 1, and then baptism, number 2. And baptism is the ritual that Christians use to signify the connection to Christ. But there's another side to the coin of connection with Christ having to do with baptism, and that's connection to the community of Christ. So Paul, one of the early writers in the Jesus movement, talked about, as many of you were baptized into his body. That's a very powerful way of saying it. Is that when we're baptized into Christ, meaning when we're baptized as a way of identifying our lives with Christ and saying we want to weave our stories into the story of Christ, we are also at the same time joined to him and everyone else who is joined to him. So kind of like it or not, or whether even we're aware of it or not, we join a community when we join Christ, because Christ is a communal person. So I wanted to highlight that because on Easter Sunday we will be having a baptism. We do baptisms every Easter. It's really one of the high points of the year for us at the church, and that's what that tank in the front of the speaker's platform is. That round circular thing, it looks like a jacuzzi. That's actually a baptistry where we baptize people. So we practice immersion baptism. In the Greek, the word for baptize really is literally the word for dip or immerse. It was what people who dyed cloth would do. They would take the cloth and put a vat of dye, and they would dip the cloth into the dye and change its color. That's what the word baptize means. It means immerse. So we practice baptism by immersion here at the church. Now, if someone maybe is autistic or has some kind of a sensory kind of a thing where actually being dipped in water would be frightening or anything like that, we can do baptism in other ways. So it's not like it has to be done that way, but that's kind of the normative way that we do it here at the church. And sometimes people ask, well, I was baptized as an infant, like say as an Episcopalian or Lutheran or Roman Catholic, and then maybe I stopped really practicing any faith, or it didn't really take, and I feel like it would really be meaningful to me to be baptized now as an adult who's made a more personal confession of faith. Is that okay if I be baptized at the church? And the answer to that question is yes. So if that would be meaningful to you, that would be just fine. At the same time, we also recognize and respect the validity of infant baptism if that's meaningful for you, and that was, like it took in your case, so to speak. So the way I like to think of it is like I was baptized in the Episcopal Church. I wasn't raised with a strong Christian upbringing. I had a period of time when I definitely was not a Christian. In fact, I was an atheist, came back to faith, and for me it was really meaningful for me to be baptized. I think I was 19 or 20 when I was baptized. But I actually think of that as kind of a fulfillment of what happened when I was an infant. It was like my yes to that event that my parents did, as it were, on my behalf. So we try to take that approach to baptism in the Vineyard. So if you're interested in baptism, and actually Jesus commands his disciples to be baptized, so it's like not an optional thing for following Jesus. It's a summons, just like the call to discipleship is a summons. One of the early things you can do to be obedient to Jesus is to say yes to his summons to be baptized, and because that signifies what a complete connection he wants with us. So I think that'd be great if you haven't been baptized, or you want to be baptized now as an adult Jesus follower, to do that this Easter. And just so you know what happens, we do it during the service. A normal kind of flow for the service. After the sermon, we have communion, and then after the communion, during the rest of the celebration songs, the baptisms are happening up front. So people are standing up, they're worshiping. It's not like there's a camera, focused on you while you're getting baptized. So it's kind of a festive atmosphere. There's probably other people being baptized at the same time, and we walk you through all the details. And again, if the problem of being dunked in the water is frightening or anything like that, we can figure out other ways to do it, or pour the water over your head, or do it from outside the tank, and with sprinkling, and just the church has experimented with many ways of doing baptism, so we get to pick any one of those ways if it works better in your case. So I want to talk today about making the Vineyard Church your church home. Belonging in that more committed or intentional sense that is reflected in membership. So I want to talk a little bit about how we think about membership here at the Vineyard, and what the responsibilities of membership are, and all that good stuff. I want to begin by reading our mission statement. In some places it's called our vision statement, but actually it probably is a mission statement. And I wonder if there would be someone at one of the tables who's got a booming voice who could just read that out for us, that mission statement. Raise your hand, I'll acknowledge you, and then you can go, so you don't have to worry about it. There you go, Michael, you do it.
To humbly bear the transforming presence of Jesus into the heart of the Ann Arbor area through Jesus brand spirituality, community, and works of justice and compassion, to plant new churches in southeastern Michigan and beyond.
So mission statement is like, what is this church for? What is this church to do? And it's something, this is our statement that we use to kind of say, are we keeping our eye on the ball? Are we focusing our energies in the direction of what we've discerned to be God's mission for us as a local church community? And that, I think, is a fairly clear way of saying what it is that we feel called to do. And I maybe just want to note something that doesn't show up a lot, which is to plant other churches in southeast Michigan and beyond. We've actually been involved in planting 3 other churches. Vineyard Church in Milan is kind of the most developed. The Vineyard Church in Monroe, south of here, and the Vineyard Church in Kalamazoo. All of those are planted by people who started here in the Ann Arbor Vineyard, and we supported them in the planting. We actually, our very first church plant was a Messianic